Privilege is invisible to those who have it. Michael Kimmel.
Hi, everyone. We are excited to bring you another episode of Easier with a Friend. This week, we have been following the news about Kim Kardashian telling women to, quote, get your fucking ass up and work, unquote, and the Kardashian backlash about that. As always, this is Chi.
And Elaine.
And of course, we have been discussing it, and we have some thoughts about this whole drama.
Exactly. So Kim Kardashian also said, quote, it seems like nobody wants to work these days, end quote. And this has inspired outrage across the internet. She and I have been following this and really trying to see it from several angles, giving people kind of the benefit of the doubt. So just to start off, I'm not trying to take away from what the Kardashian family has achieved, because I know that in her own mind, and I'm sure in reality, that Kim Kardashian does work hard, right? She runs several businesses. She talks a lot about how many hours she doesn't sleep and how many business meetings and things like that she has. I just think that the flip side of that is that she also doesn't see that she probably has an army of helpers that also assist her, right? I'm sure she has nannies and cooks and personal trainers and things like that to keep her empire going. And a normal woman, the average woman, is not going to have any of that. You would be lucky as a woman in America, let's say you have a child or 4 children like she does, and you would be lucky to have help, because a lot of times, most of us live very far away from our families.
I completely agree with that. The ability to afford help with your family so that you can dedicate more of your hours to work is a huge privilege, to be completely honest. I struggled with that when my kids were younger. And my husband and I, we still have to juggle those responsibilities between our jobs and our responsibility to our kids and our family. So yeah, that is something that not even to the level of, let's say, a Kardashian wealth, but even people who are just able to afford good daycare for their kids versus single moms and people who are struggling to find good help, find someone to take care of their children while they're trying to go to work. So the level of privilege here is extreme, right? They grew up with extreme privilege. But even when you're comparing just people who aren't Kardashians, but when you're comparing other people, I acknowledge that I have some privilege that other moms and other women do not.
Right.
And I am definitely not Kardashian rich, Right. But I think what you said earlier about how for people with those privilege, it may be invisible to people who have it. And she probably feels she works very hard.
Mm-hmm.
She probably feels that her whole family work very hard to have what they have. And in their mind, it's true, but she may be blind to the privilege that she has compared to everybody else.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. And I think that I've really tried to give her the benefit of the doubt in terms of what she said, but it's bad that she's this privileged and just doesn't recognize it. I've been giving her a little grace in terms of trying to feel that she wasn't meaning anything bad by it. But if you look back at her beginning, right? Like I said, not trying to take anything away from her, she leveraged a sex video into the stratospheric fame that she has today, right? And I don't know about you, but there are things that I just wouldn't do.
I agree. But as far as we know, it wasn't her choice to have released that video, as far as we know, right? Now, she took what potentially is a scarlet letter A moment and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar empire for not just herself, but her sisters. Again, like you, I would not recommend that route for anyone else, but she leveraged that into fame. And of course, with her mom being very smart at what she does, was able to use the spotlight and turn it into something huge for the whole family. I think they were paid something like $10 million a year for keeping up with the Kardashian or something ridiculous like that. And just the opportunities that her younger sisters got, the exposure that they got from being on the show, they were able to leverage their own successful businesses. So yeah, not every person have those kinds of opportunities. And I think that her advice is better meant for maybe someone that has similar upbringing, someone who was also raised by millionaire parents in a privileged place.
Right.
Maybe there are people out there who just sits around waiting to inherit wealth. Maybe her advice is meant for them and not for the average woman. And, her 24 hours in a day looks very different than most people's 24 hours in a day. And it's not for a lack of hard work. So I know as a fact that you, Elaine, work very hard. And you and I are almost the exact same age as Kim Kardashian. So it's quite interesting because we look at our education background and how much schooling we've put in. We look at how hard we work every day with our jobs, weekends, late nights. I've worked 2 jobs for most of my working adult life. And it's not that I didn't put in the hours. It's not that I was sitting on my ass, as she says, and not working, and that I didn't invest in myself and trying to get an education so that I could get a better paying job. But obviously, the opportunities I have to make $10 million a year, the exposure is not there. I cannot just go out there and have the same exposure that she has. And even looking at the fact that her dad was a lawyer and he taught her a lot about business. One of the first things she started doing was having exposure to celebrities and styling their closets for them. Even if I had a bunch of knowledge about fashion and I could do that job, it's hard for me to have connection to a celebrity clientele so that I can start getting my name out there. So That's a very basic example of how her privilege has helped her from day one. She wouldn't have those connections without her rich dad who had connections.
Right. And to follow up on that, as a matter of fact, Jamila Jamil actually tweeted back at the Kardashians and had a lot to say about what Kim said. But to summarize, basically saying that for women who essentially have made their money off their looks, and she's not taking away from what they've done and the genius that it's taken to get there, but she said essentially that everybody knows where they made their money from. And so they should not lecture people on working hard and using your time correctly. Part of the exact quote says, "I hope nobody holds themselves to the standards of people who were raised by millionaires."
I think that's the most important part of her quote. And I think the part that I really want people to understand is don't compare yourself to the Kardashians. Don't compare yourself to other people who are more privileged than you. Your level of success should be defined by what your goals are that you set for yourself and not some unrealistic standard that other people who have a ton more help, a ton more resources at their disposal. Don't compare yourself. That's not good for your mental health. That's not realistic. That's not going to bring you happiness. I think the better thing to do is to see that they are privileged, happy for them. Good luck with that route. That's your life. And instead, set realistic goals for yourself. Do what's right for you and your family. And as a matter of fact, even among our group of friends, right? We have a big group of friends that we went to high school with. Some of our friends grew up with more privilege than I. And I was just telling Elaine about this earlier when we were discussing this episode, that the fact that if you grew up with 2 parents who spoke English is a privilege, because my parents, both of my parents, although my dad speak a little, he was not going to volunteer at the school. My mom was not able to read the permission slip and sign it for me to go on field trips. And there were just things like that that you kind of figure out as a kid whose parents did not speak English, right? Versus we have friends whose parents went to college in America and were able to help them with schoolwork and help them navigate through just the college admission process or knowing how to set them up to be more successful when they apply for college. All those things are privileges that a lot of people don't even know, even just like I said, among friends.
Right. Well, and it's like we've been saying, it's very easy to be blinded to the fact that those things are, in fact, privilege. Because when you look back, you just go, well, my dad just helped me fill out a few college applications, right? But not acknowledging that even something like that is a privilege to somebody else. Because there are people who are the first person to have gone to college in 3, 4, whatever generations of their family. So there was nobody to help them with their college entrance essays or applications, right? They absolutely had to learn how to do that themselves. But there was definitely an extra step to them achieving that, right? But I also think that in America in particular, it is very easy to be blinded to privilege because we are the land of opportunity. And that is still true in spite of what may or may not be happening in the world today. That is still something where in America, you could be Eminem, right? Come from poverty and be one of the most famous rappers in the world, make hundreds of millions of dollars. But if you look at the handful of artists who have really made a success of themselves and count that across a population of 300 million people, I mean, that's not a big percentage of people who have managed to pull themselves up from poverty. And I'm not saying that that's the only level of success. That's simply the ones we can see, right? I'm sure there are people across varying levels of success in America who came from a very impoverished background. But because in America, we see those stories all the time, because we hold them up as the golden standard of what America can be, I think it's very easy to be blinded by the fact that most of America don't work that way.
Exactly. That's the point I wanted to make too, is the level of privilege between people who are upper class and middle class and people who live in poverty. It's already different. And then, of course, you compare that to someone who is so privileged, like a Kardashian, and they're so far removed from most people's reality that I would say ignore advice from someone like that. Ignore it. And even when it comes to not just business advice, but beauty advice, ignore it because it's not realistic. As you say earlier, there's a whole team of people. It is her job to look good. No one is paying me to put on makeup every day. So I'm not investing that kind of time and energy into it because no one is paying me. No one's going to snap my picture when I go grocery shopping. And then therefore, as part of my brand, whatever it is. So it is not my job to look that good 24/7. I need to invest my time in something that's going to pay me so I can feed my family. Right. So definitely the comparison is not healthy.
Right. And just touching on what you said, I think the opportunities, just what you get presented is completely different. It's like we generally, as a society, tend to think people are cheating the system somehow. That whole picture of how everybody just wants to be lazy. As someone who is boots on the ground, right? I cannot tell you the number of times I have had single moms come in my office who get $0 in child support. And not only $0 in child support, $0 in any other form of public help. They do not get housing support. They do not receive Social Security for their kids. They do, as a matter of fact, work 3 jobs to put food on the table. And that is the reality of America. We're both definitely not at the Kardashian level of making money. Not even close. I think that at this point in my life, I might have to acknowledge that in my entire lifetime, I may not be worth 1/10 of what she is worth, but that's okay. I recognize that where I am in life, I've already had a lot of privilege to get here. I recognize that I am already well ahead of many, many people across the world, right? I'm not concerned with what am I going to do for money after retirement. And that already, huge privilege. It's like she said, for a lot of our immigrant parents, it wasn't even a question that crossed their mind. because there wasn't a spare penny to put towards any savings for retirement. And if you come from a family like that, wherever you've gotten to in life, I mean, you have to acknowledge that you've taken yourself a long way.
I just want to end it with saying what you do in a day may already be more impressive than what Kim Kardashian does with her 24 hours a day. You may not be paid as much. You may not get enough attention or any attention from people outside your family to acknowledge what you're doing. But what you are doing in a day may account to more hard work than what she does with her day.
Absolutely. Once again, we've reached the end of Easier with a Friend for today. We truly thank each and every one of you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, take the time to reach out to a friend and reconnect. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on Facebook, Spotify, or Apple Music so you won't miss any new episodes. Follow us on Instagram at Easier with a Friend, on our Facebook page, Easier with a Friend, or email us at easierwithafriend@gmail.com. Check out our website, easierwithafriend.com, for today's transcript.